In 1959, one company invented something that would go on to save more than 1 million human lives. They owned the patent. They had the exclusive legal right to license it, to charge every other car manufacturer on Earth for the privilege of using it. Instead, they gave it away. For free. To every competitor. Forever. No royalties. No licensing fees. No lawsuits. Executives at the time called it financial suicide. 70 years later, that suicidal decision is the reason this company built one of the most valuable brands in the history of the automotive industry, without ever building the fastest car, the cheapest car, or the most luxurious car. This is the story of Volvo. And the real question isn't just what they did. It's why giving something away for free turned out to be one of the smartest business moves ever made. Say BMW, and people think performance. Say Mercedes, and people think luxury. Say Ferrari, and people think speed and status. Say Tesla, and people think innovation. Now say Volvo. One word appears in almost everyone's mind, instantly, without hesitation: safety. That is an extraordinarily rare thing in branding. Fortune 500 companies spend billions of dollars a year trying to own a single concept in the public's mind. Most never succeed. Volvo did it, and it didn't come from a slogan or an ad campaign. It came from a strategic decision made in the 1950s, when Volvo was a small Swedish manufacturer staring at a problem that should have ended the company. In the mid-20th century, Volvo could not win a fight it tried to fight on anyone else's terms. It couldn't outproduce American manufacturers, who were rolling cars off assembly lines by the millions. It couldn't out-engineer German brands built on decades of performance heritage. It couldn't out-glamorize Italian sports cars built on emotion and prestige. And it couldn't compete on price against manufacturers with far larger economies of scale. Trying to compete on every front at once is exactly how small companies die. So Volvo's leadership asked a different question, not how do we beat everyone, but what is the one thing we can become the undisputed best in the world at? The answer wasn't speed. It wasn't design. It wasn't luxury. It was protecting human life. At the time, this looked like a losing strategy. Nobody dreams about crash test scores. Nobody browses car magazines hoping to read about occupant protection ratings. People dream about horsepower, acceleration, style. But Volvo had identified something deeper than what people say they want. They understood what people are actually buying when they buy a car. A car is rarely purchased for the buyer alone. Parents aren't buying transportation, they're buying protection for the children in the back seat. A husband buying a car for his wife isn't thinking about the engine, he's thinking about her getting home safely on a snowy night. Volvo built its entire identity around that emotional truth. It stopped selling cars. It started selling peace of mind. And in 1959, that philosophy produced the single most important moment in the company's history. Volvo hired an engineer named Nils Bohlin, a man who had previously designed ejector seats for fighter jets. In 1958, Volvo brought him on as the company's first ever dedicated safety engineer, and gave him one job: solve the seatbelt problem. At the time, seatbelts were crude lap belts, or awkward diagonal straps that could crush a person's ribs in a crash. Bohlin spent about a year testing and refining a new design, a belt that crossed both the shoulder and the hip, distributing crash force across the strongest parts of the human body, and could be fastened with a single hand. In 1959, the modern three-point seatbelt was born. Volvo installed its standard in its cars, starting with the Volvo 122. Volvo owned the patent outright. They had every legal right to charge every automaker on the planet to use it. Instead, Volvo opened the patent to the entire industry. For free. Try to imagine the modern equivalent. Imagine Apple inventing the touchscreen smartphone and handing the technology to Samsung, free of charge. Imagine Coca-Cola publishing its secret formula for Pepsi to use. That is roughly the scale of what Volvo did in 1959. On paper, this looks like Volvo threw away a fortune. In reality, they made a bet that would pay off for the next 70 years. Volvo's reasoning was simple: if millions of people around the world survived crashes because of this invention, the world would never forget who invented it. By the time Nils Boland passed away in 2002, Volvo estimated the 3-point seatbelt had already saved more than 1 million lives in the 4 decades since its introduction. Today, that estimate is often cited as being well over 1 million, and in the United States alone, government safety regulators credit seatbelts with saving thousands of lives every single year. Every one of those survivors, every family that walked away from a crash, every newspaper article about the safety belt, all of it, quietly and permanently, reinforced one brand. Volvo didn't spend a fortune on advertising to build this reputation. They spent decades earning it, one saved life at a time. That is the core lesson: most companies chase quarterly profit. Volvo invested in decades of trust. And trust, unlike an advertising campaign, compounds. It gets stronger every year, without Volvo having to spend a single additional dollar to renew it. Here is what most brand strategists miss about Volvo: giving away the seatbelt patent wasn't a one-time PR stunt. It was the first data point in 70 years of the exact same decision, made over and over again. Every time Volvo's engineers had to choose between making a car more exciting or making it safer, safety won. Every time Volvo's marketing team built a new campaign, the message stayed identical. Decade after decade, the innovations piled up, and every one of them pointed back to the same idea: side impact protection systems, whiplash protection, advanced child safety seating, pedestrian detection systems, automatic emergency braking, modern driver assistance technology. Most companies pivot their identity constantly: this year it's sustainability, next year it's innovation, the year after it's affordability. Customers get confused, and confusion kills brand equity. Volvo never pivoted. Which meant something remarkable eventually happened: people stopped asking whether Volvo was safe. They simply assumed it. That is one of the highest achievements in branding: the moment a company's reputation becomes so strong that customers no longer need proof. The brand itself becomes the proof. This shift changed Volvo's entire cost structure, in ways that are easy to underestimate. Trust reduces the cost of selling. Parents recommended Volvo to other parents. Doctors, physical therapists, and insurance professionals, people whose entire job is understanding injury and risk, routinely praised Volvo's engineering. Word of mouth became more powerful, and more cost-effective, than any advertisement Volvo could have bought. By the time every other manufacturer caught up on safety technology, and eventually, they all did, Volvo wasn't competing on features anymore. It was competing with decades of accumulated trust. And trust is one of the only competitive advantages in business that is genuinely, structurally difficult to copy. You cannot buy 70 years of consistency. You can only build it. Today, virtually every automaker has strong safety technology. Mercedes invests heavily in it. Toyota has excellent crash ratings. Tesla builds cutting-edge active safety systems. So why, after all these decades, does Volvo still own the word safety in the public's mind? Because consumers rarely remember who caught up. They remember who led first. Apple didn't invent the smartphone. Netflix didn't invent streaming video. Tesla didn't invent the electric car. Yet each of those brands became permanently, mentally fused with their category in the public consciousness, because they were first, and because they never let go of that position. Volvo did exactly the same thing with safety. Being first mattered. But staying relentlessly consistent for 70 straight years mattered even more. The car industry today looks nothing like the one Volvo entered in the 1950s. Electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, and software are reshaping the entire market. Competition has never been fiercer. And yet Volvo is still making the exact same promise it made in 1959: technology exists to protect people, not simply to impress them. That single, unchanging idea is why the company's brand identity has survived economic downturns, ownership changes, and multiple industry revolutions, while markets, tastes, and technologies shifted around it again and again. Because here is the truth at the center of this entire story: technologies change. Consumer trends change. Entire markets get disrupted. But the desire to protect the people we love never changes. Volvo didn't build its empire on the safest car. It built its empire on the safest feeling. It never tried to build the fastest vehicle on the road. It tried to become the most trusted name in the industry, and trust, unlike horsepower, doesn't appreciate. So the next time you see a Volvo, understand what you're actually looking at. You are not looking at a company that built a global, multi-billion-dollar brand around speed, luxury, or style. You're looking at a company that built its entire empire by owning one single, powerful idea, and refusing, for 70 straight years, to let go of it. Because in business, the companies that try to stand for everything usually end up standing for nothing. But the companies willing to own one idea, completely and permanently, can end up owning an entire generation of customers.